All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into some really fascinating stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be exploring consciousness,
Okay.
the self, and even like the very fabric of reality.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're basing our exploration on an article
Okay.
that summarizes a discussion with some people who uh, have dedicated their lives to these questions.
Right.
Roger Thiel, Daniel Ingram, Brian Scott.
I've heard of some of
Yeah,
those.
these are folks who claim to have achieved a state of awakening known as the fourth path.
Okay. Interesting.
So what I find intriguing about this article is how it kind of blends Buddhist philosophy and meditation practices
Uh,
and even like insights from psychedelic experiences
right.
to kind of tackle this age-old question. Is the self an illusion?
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big question. But the article lays out a roadmap of sorts, starting with Roger Thiel's framework of 5 stages of awakening.
The 5 stages. Okay.
Now, you might be familiar with the basic progression of these stages,
Yeah.
from the solid sense of self we all experience
Right.
to a more fluid, less defined understanding.
I see.
But what I find fascinating is how each stage reveals a shift in our perception and experience of reality.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
So walk us through these stages.
Yeah.
What are the key shifts that occur along this path of awakening?
Well, in the first stage, it's all about me versus the world.
Right.
It's that familiar sense of self
Yeah.
that most of us operate from day to day, you know?
That I am here and you are there.
Exactly. But then in the second stage, something interesting happens.
What's that?
A witness kind of emerges. It's like a part of your consciousness steps back and observes your thoughts, emotions, and experiences from a distance.
So it's almost as if you're watching your own life unfold from like a bird's eye view.
Exactly. And this shift can be quite liberating because you're no longer completely caught up in the whirlwind of your internal world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But then
What happens then?
things take an even more radical turn in the third stage, the so-called God mind or oneness stage.
Now, this is where the boundaries between the self and the universe start to blur.
Right, precisely.
Okay.
The article describes it as like an overwhelming feeling of interconnectedness with everything.
Wow.
But here's the
Wow.
paradox.
I love a good paradox.
Even in this state of unity,
Yeah.
there's still a strong sense of self.
Really?
In fact, it can actually feel magnified.
So even more of a self.
Yeah, as though you're responsible for the entire cosmos.
Whoa, that's a lot.
It's a lot to handle, to say the least.
Yeah, that's quite a leap from feeling like a separate self to suddenly feeling responsible for the entire universe.
That's right. But then
Oh, it changes again.
it changes again in stage 4,
Okay.
the no-self stage.
Right.
No self, where the real deconstruction of the self begins.
Okay, so like what happens?
This stage is all about recognizing that everything we perceive, thoughts, sensations, emotions, is ultimately impermanent and not the true essence of who we are. The practice encourages a detachment from all these fleeting phenomena.
So it's like peeling away layers of an onion, realizing that what we initially perceived as the core of our being is actually just another layer to be shed.
That's a great way to put it.
Awesome.
And this leads to the 5th and final stage, the most enigmatic of them all, no self and no center.
What does that even mean?
Right.
No self, no center, does anything remain at that point?
It's a state that transcends duality, the separation between self and other.
Okay.
There's a sense of peace and harmony.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, but as you can imagine, integrating this experience into everyday life presents its own unique challenges.
I can imagine.
The article mentions that individuals who've reached this stage often struggle with even simple tasks like navigating a room or making a phone call.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
You'd think that a state of such profound realization would make life easier, not harder.
Right.
Why would losing the self create such difficulties?
Well, consider this. We've spent our entire lives operating from a fixed sense of self, a point of reference that helps us navigate the world.
Sure.
When that reference point dissolves, it can be disorienting.
I can see that.
Imagine trying to walk across a room without knowing where you are in relation to the walls, the furniture, everything around you.
Oh, yeah.
It's a similar experience.
It's a fascinating way to think about it. It's like
Yeah.
learning to walk all over again, but this time without the familiar landmarks of me and mine.
Exactly.
So if these stages represent a progression towards a less defined sense of self, how do psychedelic experiences fit into this picture?
Oh, that's a good question.
The article specifically mentions 5-MeO-DMT and DMT.
Right.
And it seems like they produce very different effects.
Yeah, that's what makes this discussion so compelling, you know?
Okay.
It challenges our assumptions about the nature of reality.
I like it.
5-MeO-DMT.
Yeah.
It seems to induce an experience that closely mirrors the no-self state achieved through deep meditation. Whereas DMT tends to multiply the sense of self,
Really?
leading to a fragmented, multifaceted experience.
So on one hand, you have the complete dissolution of the self.
Yeah,
And on the other, you have a splintering into multiple selves.
exactly.
It's enough to make you question which model of reality is more accurate.
Right.
Which experience reflects the true nature of things.
Exactly. And that leads us to another key question
What's that?
that the article raises.
Right.
Is the self, as we conventionally understand it, actually an illusion?
That's a bold statement.
It is.
What evidence do they offer to support this claim?
Well, the article presents three primary arguments.
Okay.
The first one centers around the idea of predictive power.
Predictive power.
So a good model of reality should accurately predict our experiences, right?
Makes sense.
But the traditional model of the self, with its fixed and enduring qualities,
Right.
it fails to account for the radical shifts in consciousness
Okay.
that are possible through practices like meditation or the use of psychedelics.
That's true.
If the self were truly fixed and unchanging, these experiences wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So if our understanding of the self can't predict or explain these profound shifts in experience, it suggests that our model might be flawed, or at least incomplete.
Precisely.
Okay.
The second argument focuses on the concept of changeability.
Changeability.
If the self were truly an inherent fundamental truth, it wouldn't be susceptible to alteration through practices or substances.
Okay.
But the fact that we can change our sense of self,
You can?
even temporarily,
Okay.
suggests that it's not as solid and unchanging as we might believe.
So it's like saying that because we can change our clothes, our bodies must also be an illusion. The clothes are simply an external expression, not the essence of who we are.
That's a good analogy.
Thanks.
And the third argument delves into the potentially misleading nature of our feelings.
Okay.
We've all experienced like intense sadness.
Yeah.
That feels like it will last forever.
For sure.
But eventually it passes. It does. Similarly, our sense of self might feel incredibly solid and permanent.
It does.
But that doesn't necessarily make it true.
Ooh, that's deep.
Our feelings can deceive us, even when it comes to something as fundamental as our sense of identity.
So the article is suggesting that our deeply ingrained feeling of I-ness might be just another fleeting experience,
Yeah.
like sadness or joy, rather than a fundamental truth about who we are.
Exactly. And this brings us to one of the most mind-boggling concepts.
I'm ready.
The article introduces recursive self-modeling.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Sure.
What exactly is recursive self-modeling?
Imagine the brain as a series of virtual machines, each layer observing the one below it.
Okay.
It's like a hall of mirrors,
Ooh.
each reflection reflecting another reflection, and so on.
Oh.
The brain is constantly creating models of itself and its environment,
Okay.
and those models are layered upon each other, creating a complex feedback loop.
So is there an ultimate foundational self at the bottom of all these layers, a true I that's doing the observing? Or is it just an infinite regress of perception, turtles all the way down, as the article puts it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we'll continue to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
All right, everybody, make sure to join us for part 2.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
We're going to really get into this and a lot more.
We are.
All right, see you then.
See you later.
We left off talking about recursive self-modeling.
Oh, yeah.
That whole idea of the brain creating these models of itself,
Right.
layers upon layers.
Yeah.
It's a truly wild concept.
It really is.
It really makes you wonder, is there a me in there somewhere, or are we just chasing an illusion?
That's the heart of it, you know?
Yeah.
The article doesn't really give us like a definitive answer,
Right.
but it offers this interesting perspective shift.
Okay.
Maybe instead of searching for a fixed self, we should start thinking about the self as a process,
Okay.
like a constant unfolding of experience.
So instead of a noun, it's more like a verb,
Exactly.
a continual selfing.
That's a good way to put it.
I like it.
And this aligns with the Buddhist concept of anicca, the idea that everything is in flux, impermanent.
Yeah, okay.
Even the things we consider most solid, like mountains or stars, they're changing over time.
But how does that relate to me sitting here right now. I feel pretty solid.
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
Every cell in your body is different from the cells you had 7 years ago.
Wow, that's true.
Your thoughts, your feelings,
Yeah.
even your memories are constantly shifting.
That's crazy.
You're not the same person you were yesterday, let alone years ago.
Whoa, that's actually kind of freeing.
Yeah.
Like if I mess up today,
Right.
there's always a chance to become like a slightly better me tomorrow.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Embracing impermanence can release us from the pressure of a fixed identity. There's less need to defend this rigid idea of me
Yeah.
because we can acknowledge it as just a temporary state.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
All right.
But if everything is in flux, how do we make sense of the world? How do we form relationships, make decisions,
Right.
have any sense of continuity in our lives?
Well, think of a river.
Okay.
It's constantly flowing, changing, yet it maintains a form, a direction.
Right.
Like that river constantly evolving, yet still a part of a larger flow.
Okay, that analogy makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we're not these fixed, independent selves,
Yeah.
what does that mean for how we understand like our connection to others?
Ooh, that's where it gets really fascinating.
Okay, I like it.
If we let go of these rigid boundaries of the self,
Okay.
we can start to see the interconnectedness of everything.
Okay.
Just as the river is connected to the ocean, our individual experiences are connected to a larger web of consciousness.
It's like we're all part of one big flowing river of consciousness.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thank you.
And this realization can have a profound impact on how we relate to others.
For sure.
If we see ourselves as interconnected rather
Yeah.
than separate, it fosters empathy, compassion, and a sense of shared humanity.
It's like we're all in this together.
Exactly.
So like practically speaking, how do we bring this awareness into our daily lives?
Right.
It's easy to talk about interconnectedness in the abstract.
Right.
But how do we actually live it?
Well, it starts with cultivating curiosity and openness
Okay.
towards our own experience.
Yeah.
Instead of clinging to these fixed ideas of who we are,
Right.
we can begin to investigate the underlying processes that create our sense of self.
So it's like we've been handed a magnifying glass and encouraged to examine the intricate workings of our own minds.
Exactly.
I can do that.
And this process of self-inquiry can be incredibly revealing.
Okay.
It allows us to see through the illusions and stories we tell ourselves about who we are.
But where do we even begin? It feels overwhelming, like I'm being asked to dissect my own brain.
I understand, but the article points to several paths,
Okay.
Meditation, mindfulness, even certain psychedelic experiences can offer glimpses into the nature of self.
Right.
But it can also be as simple as paying closer attention to your thoughts, feelings, and sensations.
So it's about becoming more aware of our internal landscape,
Yes,
noticing the patterns and habits that shape our experience.
precisely.
Yeah.
And the more we observe, the more we realize how much of our experience is based on assumptions and beliefs
Right.
that we've never really questioned.
So what's the end goal here? Are we supposed to like abandon the idea of self altogether?
Not necessarily. It's
Yeah.
more about recognizing the limitations of
Sure.
our conventional understanding of self.
Well,
It's about holding our sense of identity lightly
right.
with a sense of humor and humility.
It's like realizing that the me we cling to so tightly is just a character in a play.
Yeah.
We can still play the role, but we don't have to take it so seriously.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
And when we let go of the need to defend a limited sense of self,
Right.
we open ourselves up to a much wider range of experiences and possibilities.
I like that.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've explored the idea of the self as a process,
right.
the importance of embracing impermanence
Yeah,
and the interconnectedness of everything.
yeah.
But I still have this like nagging question.
Oh, what's that?
What does it all mean for how we live our lives?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And that's what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Right.
We'll delve into the practical implications of these ideas
Okay.
and how we can apply them to our relationships, our work, and our understanding of the world.
Sounds good. I'll see you there.
All right, see you then.
Okay, welcome back, everybody.
Yeah, welcome back.
So we've been on quite a journey today, exploring the nature of self,
Mm-hmm.
consciousness, and reality. It has been a lot to unpack.
Yeah, for sure.
We've gone from the stages of awakening to the like mind-bending idea
Right.
of the brain modeling itself.
Recursive self-modeling.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah, it's wild.
And now we come to the practical part.
The practical part, okay.
How do we actually like apply these insights to our lives.
Yeah, that's the question.
What difference does all this make when we face our everyday challenges?
Right. It's all well and good to think about it theoretically, but how does this help us in our daily lives?
Right, because it's one thing to contemplate the illusion of self in a theoretical sense, but how does that help me navigate a tough conversation with a coworker or deal with the stress of deadlines?
Right. And I think one key takeaway from everything we've discussed is the importance of letting go of rigid attachments.
Okay.
If the self is fluid and always changing, then clinging to fixed ideas of who I am only creates more suffering.
So instead of saying, I'm bad at public speaking and I always will be,
Yeah.
it's more about recognizing that that's just a story I'm telling myself. And that story can change.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
And this applies not only to our self-image, but also to our opinions, our beliefs, even our relationships.
Okay.
The tighter we grip, the more resistance we create.
Right.
And that prevents us from fully experiencing life's richness.
It's like trying to hold on to water. The tighter you squeeze your hand, the faster it slips through your fingers.
A perfect analogy.
Oh, thanks.
And this idea of letting go really connects to the practice of mindfulness,
Mindfulness. Okay.
which is all about paying attention to the present moment
Right.
without judgment.
Yeah, okay.
So when we're truly present, we're less likely to get caught up in these stories
Okay.
about who we are or who we should be.
So it's about shifting our focus from the past and future to the here and now.
Yes.
Just being. But doesn't that lead to passivity?
That's a good question.
Like if I accept everything, won't I just become apathetic?
Not at all. Letting go isn't about resigning yourself to whatever happens.
Okay.
It's about choosing how you respond
Okay.
to your experiences
Yeah.
rather than just reacting habitually.
So it's that delicate balance between acceptance and action.
Yes.
Recognizing things change,
Yes.
but I still have the power to, like, shape my response.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to the idea of selfing as a verb.
Yeah.
We're not static beings. We're always evolving,
Right.
growing, becoming.
So instead of asking, who am I?
Yeah.
Which seems to, like, point to some fixed answer.
Right.
Maybe the question is, who am I becoming?
I love that. It
And,
shifts the focus from like a fixed identity to a journey of exploration and growth.
And if we're honest, that journey can be both exciting and terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
Because embracing change means stepping outside of our comfort zones,
Yeah.
being open to the unknown.
Right. It's like being handed a blank canvas and told to create your masterpiece.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's exhilarating, but also a bit daunting.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and instead of paints and brushes, we're working with our thoughts, our actions, our experiences, shaping who we become.
So with all this deep diving into consciousness, self, and reality,
Yeah.
what's the ultimate takeaway?
I think it boils down to this. We have more power to shape our lives than we often realize.
Right.
The self isn't some fixed entity
Right.
dictating our destiny.
Right.
We are the authors of our own stories, constantly writing and rewriting them.
That's a really empowering thought.
It is.
It means even if I've made mistakes, had setbacks,
Yeah.
those aren't the final word.
No.
There's always a new chapter to be written.
Exactly. And the journey of awakening, as the article calls it, isn't about reaching some perfect state of enlightenment.
Okay.
You know, it's about embracing the process of becoming,
Right.
letting go of what no longer serves us, and
Yes.
cultivating a sense of curiosity and wonder towards ourselves and the world.
So to wrap things up, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep becoming.
I love it.
That's all for this deep dive.
This has been great.
Until next time, keep asking those big questions.
Yeah, don't stop.
And never stop diving deeper into the mysteries of life.
See you next time.